Good afternoon, everyone. The topic for today's lecture is on antiseptics and disinfectants. The next. So, the slide projected here, you must be familiar with all these specimens here, namely the projection of Savlon, Dettol, Listerine, hydrogen peroxide that are available in the market. They are available as antiseptics and disinfectants. As we know, we are in the COVID era, and they are the most important useful applications in this in the combating in this against these microorganisms. But even if we use antiseptics and disinfectants, the most important and universal source or the application of use of soap and water is the best antiseptic and detergent what is available, easily available, cheap, and that is the most useful means of antisepsis. And the second slide that is projected here is the use on the floor. That is the I will define you what is actually the antiseptic disinfectant in the later slides, but here you remember that the use of the soap and water, simple soap and water, is the most easy use and cheap use for against combating the microorganisms. Now we'll come to the definition one by one. Here, antiseptics and disinfectants, what are they actually? They are anti-infective substances used on living or inanimate objects, that is non-living objects, and the purpose being to reduce or kill the microorganisms. And the antiseptics, mind you, have to be used on the living objects or living tissue like on the skin and mouth, and disinfectants are used on the instruments or in the disinfection of water supply and so on. So in a nutshell, antiseptics are used on living matter and disinfectants are used on inanimate objects. The other terms which should be familiar in this particular topic is germicide. What is germicide? Germicide includes both, that is includes both the antiseptic and disinfectant, because the main aim is either being antiseptic or disinfectant is to kill the microorganisms. So germicide includes both the used against both animate and inanimate projects. So it can be a antiseptic and also a disinfectant. That is germicide. And sterilization. What is sterilization? Sterilization means complete killing of all microorganisms, including spores, and the killing of non-sporulating microorganisms is pasteurization. And pasteurization is use of hot water steam at 65 to 100 degrees centigrade, and that kills the non-sporulating microorganisms. Then next comes autoclaving. What is autoclaving? Autoclaving is use of chemical agents or ionizing irradiation or dry or moist heat or superheated steam. So either of all these means can be used in autoclaving, but the temperature has to be in and around 120 degrees centigrade. Sanitization means used on the inanimate surface. So this is the autoclave where we use the temperature of 120 degrees centigrade. So what is the spectrum of activity of these antiseptics and disinfectants? Majority of these drugs are non-selective. It means they can kill both the bacteria, fungus, parasites, and so on. So they're non-selective, and a wide spectrum of activity is there, except for certain drugs like silver nitrate, benzoyl peroxide, chlorhexidine, and gentian valate, which are mostly useful against the bacteria. Then what is the mechanism of action of these antiseptics and disinfectants? The main mechanism of action is oxidation of bacterial protoplasm, or denaturation or coagulation of the bacterial protein, or alteration in bacterial cell wall properties, or binding with the sulfidyl group necessary for bacterial enzymatic action. So most of the, when I'm saying bacteria, you should be aware that the most of these drugs are the effective against the bacterial microorganisms. What are the factors modifying the action of these drugs? The main factors are temperature and pH of the in and around in the and it is on the surface where it is to be applied or exposed, and the period of contact with the microorganisms with the antiseptic or disinfectant, nature of microbe involved, whether it's a bacterium or a fungus and so on, what is the nature, sporulating or non-sporulating and so on. The size of inoculum, that is how much is the surface of the infected matter that is available, that is present, that has to be put into antisepsis or disinfected. Then presence of blood or pus in that particular area, and the safety issues like whether it's a tissue toxicity is there on, and also it should be non-irritant, and it should not interfere with the healing process. It's very important. It should not interfere with the healing process, because most of these drugs are used in the antisepsis of the wounds and so on. So it should not affect the healing process within the tissue. Next, coming to the classification of these, how are they classified? There's a broad way of classifying. The chemical classification is the phenol derivatives, that includes phenols, which are the universal drugs used here. Phenols, then cresol, lysol, resorcinol, chloroxylenol, pethanol, thymol, chlorhexidine. This comes under phenol derivatives. Then halogens, that includes oxidizing agents like potassium permanganate, hydrogen peroxide, benzoyl peroxide. Then iodine, iodophores, chlorine, chlorophores. Then bigonides, that includes chlorhexidine. Next in the classification is quaternary ammonium compounds like cetrimide, benzyl alkylinium chloride, soaps that contain sodium and potassium, then alcohols, which includes ethanol and isopropanol, then acids, which include boric acid, acetic acid, benzoic acid, and salicylic acid. Next in the classification is the aldehydes, which includes formaldehyde and glutaraldehyde. Then metallic salts like silver nitrate, sulfur diazine, zinc sulfate, oxide, calamine, thiamerzole, nitromerzole. Then we have dyes like gentian violet, acryflavin, brilliant green. Then furans that include nitrofurazone. Then miscellaneous drugs that come in the classification are ethylene oxide gas. So first, coming to the phenols in the classification, we have the first drugs in the classification, that includes the phenols. Phenols are the earliest amongst the earliest and standard drugs available, and they are the mechanism of actions, they are considered to be general protoplasmic poison, and they are very caustic, and they denature the proteins and disrupt the cell wall, and they can lyse the inoculum, and they can be bacteriostatic or bactericidal. That is, they can interfere with the multiplication of the bacteria, or they can kill the bacteria. And uses of phenols are as disinfectants on the floors, beds, then on the sputum, pus, urine, feces, and so on. And they have also got antipruritic preparation available also as a part of antipruritic preparation, and also they've got local anesthetic action, and they also have got sclerosing agent. Sclerosing agent means they sclerize the hemorrhoid, used in the hemorrhoids as 5%. And disadvantages of phenols is that they are not effective if organic matter is present, like blood or pus. In more amount of inoculum or blood or pus are present, they have got less action. Then we've got oxidizing agents in this, which includes potassium permanganate, which is the most commonly used oxidizing agent, and used as purple crystals, available as purple crystals. And we've got astringent and oxidizing action. And mechanism of action of the oxidizing agents is they release oxygen, which oxidizes the bacterial protoplasm, and they decolorize organic matter, and they use it in wash as irrigating the wounds. And in Condi solution, which is used in dental practice, in 1:10,000, and uses gargle, mouthwash, douching, irrigation of wounds, cavities, and so on. And they also use in certain diseases like weeping, eczema, and athlete's foot. This is the potassium permanganate, which is available as crystals, purplish crystals, and they use in weeping eczema, and they used in athlete's foot as an oxidizing agent. Then Also, potassium permanganate is also used as in the poison cases as 1:5,000 as a gastric lavage, and used as styptic at 5% intended practice. And then it is used as a disinfectant for in the inanimate matter, like for water in ponds, fruits, and vegetables. And disadvantages of these potassium permanganate is it causes rusting, it stains because of the purplish color, and it is irritant to the skin, and also it can cause burns because being caustic it can cause burns. Next important oxidizing agent is hydrogen peroxide. Apart from potassium permanganate, hydrogen peroxide is very commonly used drug, and it is odorless, colorless as compared to the potassium permanganate, colorless, and releases nascent oxygen which causes effervescence, and it catalyzes and peroxidases in tissues, and it causes loosening of slough within the wounds. That's how it is used, and it's got broad spectrum cidal action, particularly on the spores in high concentration, and its uses are in irrigation and cleaning of suppurated wounds, removing adherent dressings, and so on. So, most commonly used drug, hydrogen peroxide in surgical practice to irrigate and to antisepticize the wounds, and it's also used as gargle and in mouthwash, and is used